Hello everyone, this is Chris, and this is part 4 of the Learning AutoCAD tutorial series. And this is the first video that is not beginner level. So this is an intermediate level AutoCAD. And there's going to be a lot of things that are really nitpicky, but coming from an advanced user, they are nitpicky for a very specific reason, or reasons. On beginner level, you have things like line work and, non-AEC geometry, and it's really mundane, and it's basically just an over-glorified graph paper program. And it's really difficult to screw up the file or the program when you're doing those things that are simple. But on intermediate level, you're exposed to things that become issues, inconsistencies. And when you get to advanced level, it's very common, very easy to mess up your program, which is when I complain all the time about my copy of AutoCAD being all messed up, and it's because I screwed around with stuff a long time ago that I didn't know what I was doing and didn't know how to fix it and too lazy to fix it now. Things like that. So, even though, and I guess I should say that I apologize once again for the way that I'm recording these videos, is I'm recording them with the Microsoft 10 built-in game DVR. You can go into the Xbox app and you can classify whatever program you want as a game, and you can record that game. But the DVR is not smart enough to recognize that in real life, a lot of games, but in AutoCAD, a lot of menus are still part of the program, but it's not smart enough to consider them part of the program, and so it doesn't show them. Unfortunately, with today's video, we're going to go over the differences in references. We're going to go over references, external references, and domestic references, and ways to manipulate them, and kind of think about how to use those different methods to the maximum intended use. So without further delay, let's go into our AutoCAD practice model. And let's go to the most basic level referencing. Now, I will say I'm only going to go over 3 kinds of referencing for today's video, but in the future I might go over some different kinds of references. It depends on the needs of the project, but generally speaking, there are a lot of different kinds of references available. There's generally 2 kinds of references. There's domestic and then there's external. So I'm going to go over 2 domestic and 1 external. So the domestic that I want to start off with is really basic. And in order to show it off, I need to kind of create some line work. So let's take some of this stuff that we did a long time ago. Well, feels like a long time ago. And make it a block. Sorry, make it a group. A group, I'm going to apparently mix up group and block a lot. Groups and blocks are very, very different things. They're functionally similar, but purposefully different. A group is a old man's block. A lot of people who know how to use groups really, really well are people who never really had blocks when they started using AutoCAD. Groups predate blocks by like a decade. So they're really simple, they're really mundane, but they're useful applications. With a group, you want to start with the stuff you want in a group. Okay, so I want to start with this junk as part of a group. How do I make it into a group? On the command bar, I type in group. It asks me to select objects that I want as part of the group. I want all these objects to be part of a group. And then I'm going to hit enter. Now, alternatively, I could have given the group a name, and I also could have given the group a description. Now, when I select this, it selects all the things. Notice that that's similar to what we were doing in the previous two videos, where we're taking these complex splines and kind of turning them into polylines, and how you select one segment and it selects all the others. This is different. Notice that unlike a polyline and unlike a spline, the geometry does not need to be touching in order for it to be considered one entity. This makes it really useful for things that are far apart that you would still like to consider as a single object. Like perhaps all the walls in a house you might consider to make it a single group, perhaps, or whatever this weird object is. Now, what if I want to change this object? So I'm going to make a copy of it, and I want to change it, right? I would like to change this. How do I change it? Well, I right-click and it gives me no options. I right-click on the actual thing and it gives me no options. I right-click on the bounding box and it gives me no options. I right-click on this grip, it gives me no options. In fact, all this grip does is move it. It's a really useless grip. I mean, not useless, but it's not that good. If I want to move it, I would do drop, or I would actually use the move tool. So what is the purpose of a group? To group objects together, sure, but there has to be other utilities. So I can edit the group, called group edit. If you type in G is the command for group, but GE, I think, is the shortcut for group edit. And the only thing that I can do with group edit is add or remove objects. That's it. It's really weak. The idea of a group is that you're done with this object. Whatever the heck this is, I'm done with it. I finished drawing it, it looks amazing, and I would just like to keep it the way it is, so I'm going to select all of it, and I'm going to turn it into a group. If I want to edit it, then what I should do is type in ungroup, and then select the group, and it ungroups it. Some groups are not able to be exploded. I know. So this is still a group, and I can go into the Home tab, and I believe it won't work. Yep. I can't explode it. It doesn't like it. And which is weird, right? Because normally when I have something that is like a polyline and I explode the polyline, it turns into lines and arcs. Or, notice that a lot of the different line work can be exploded into its component line work. But that's not the case for groups. Groups cannot be exploded into components. I mean, this group obviously has components. It has, a line, and a line, and it has, I think that's a spline. Yeah. So if I select all this, I have 5 objects, 3 lines, and 2 splines. Cool. Whoops. But in theory, I should be able to explode this, and it would give me my 5 objects, my 3 lines, and a spline. So if I go into the Home tab and I hit explode, it gives me an error. It says 3 were not able to be exploded. Cannot explode spline, cannot explode spline. Now the cannot explode spline popped up twice because there's 2 splines and you can't explode splines. And it says 3 were not able to be exploded. And that's really weird because there is no spline. There is a group. There is no spline. So what the heck is going on here? When you use the explode command on a group, it ignores the group and explodes what's inside of the group. And what is inside of the group? 3 lines and 2 splines. And you cannot explode lines. Lines are already exploded. You cannot explode splines. Splines are already exploded. So the explode command says, I'm going to explode this group, which means I'm going to explode the stuff inside of it. I can't explode splines and lines. Huh. So what is the purpose of a group? Well, if I have something complicated like a chair, say, I don't know, a lazy boy chair, I would love to just move it all at once. I would love to just click any part of it and then move it. That's kind of what that's kind of what groups are used for, is movement and managing of objects. They are not used for editing, right? They're not used for editing because I can't edit them. The only thing I can do is add and remove objects. So let's just delete this one because I kind of messed around with it. And I messed around with this one as well. So let's just get a fresh group. Let's get a fresh group on. No, oh god, no. A fresh group, okay. Group. Select. And I could add a name and I could add a description. I don't really care for that. So this is a group, just like it was before, and I'm going to copy it over here. Cool. So now any weird settings and any weird properties that were before as a result of me exploding and moving and ungrouping and grouping again don't apply. Fresh group from the raw data. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I say, I really hate this yellow line. I'm going to take this group. I'm going to hit ungroup. That's a lie. I'm going to go to group edit. I would like to edit this group, and I would like to remove that yellow line. So I'm going to hit remove objects, and I'm going to select that line and hit enter. So now, cool, that's part of a group, and that's not. And just to verify, that is a normal line. Awesome. So now, oh no, it didn't update over here. This is a limitation of a group that is also, ironically, its strong point. The main benefit and the main weakness of a group is that groups do not update each other. When I made this a group, and I removed this line from it, it did not remove the line from its duplicate group. These are the same groups, right? Except that AutoCAD treats them as separate entities. This is like saying, I have a line, and I take this, so I have a line, and I take this line, and I copy it, and then I take this, and I move it. How come it doesn't move this one over here? Because they're separate objects. AutoCAD considers these groups separate objects, despite the fact that all I did was take this group and copy it over here. Okay, now, let's do the same thing, but with a block. Okay, so this is just raw data that I copied from over there. Cool. Now, let's turn this into a block. So the easiest way to go into a block is to go into the ribbon under the Insert tab, Create Block. Because this block does not exist yet, so I have to create it. This is a window that popped up, and you can't see the window because the game DVR is stupid. Okay, so it asks me what I want to name my block. So I don't know what this is called. I have no idea what that symbol is. It reminds me of a phantom every time I look at it, so I'm just going to call it phantom. Why not? Phantom. It asks me for a base point. I can specify the base point on screen, which means that when I hit OK, when I close the dialog box, it's going to ask me where I want to insert the base point. I don't really care for that. So I'm just going to make the base point the origin, 0, 0, 0. Cool. It actually allows me to change the units for the block. The units for this over here, the units for the model space is in feet. So it defaults the block units to feet. And sure, why not? The block units will be feet. I can add a description. I was able to change the name of the block. I might as well add a description. But I don't really care. I know what phantom is. I know it looks like this weird thing. So actually, let me add a description anyways. So the description for this is weird thing. Weird thing. Cool. Period. Gotta have proper punctuation. It asks me what objects that I want to retain a block. Groups change objects. Blocks change objects. So the block asks me specifically, just like the group did, what objects I want to change. I'm going to specify what objects I want to change on the screen. And it asks me what to do with those blocks. I can retain the blocks. I can convert, it asks me what to do with the objects. I can retain the objects. I can convert to block, or I can delete the objects. Retaining the objects essentially keeps these objects the same and then makes a block with those objects. Convert to block takes these objects and then just straight up makes a block out of them. And delete deletes the objects and then makes the block. It doesn't really matter which one you do. It just depends on what you want to do immediately after you do the block. I'm going to use the easiest thing to do, and that's to convert to block. And then it asks me what I want the behavior, what behavior do I want the objects to have? Do I want them to have annotative? Do I want them to scale uniformly? Do I want them to be able to explode? Notice that that was allow exploding was always unchecked for groups, because groups cannot be exploded with the explode tool. They say, haha, that's funny, your explode is too weak for my tool, or whatever you want to say. Okay, so this is allow exploding check. So that means theoretically, when I create this block, I can select it and hit explode, and it will just get rid of the block. Scale uniformly, yeah, that's pretty much always a good thing. And annotative, make sure that annotative is always turned off. We are not going to do anything with annotative in this project. It is a pain in the ass. Now, I'm done with this dialog box. I gave it a name, I gave it a description, I said my base point is at the origin, I made sure my units are the same as my model space, I made sure the behavior is not annotative, scales uniformly, and allows exploding, I made sure that the objects are specified on the screen and converted to block. I should be okay. Now it's asking me for the objects that I want to create the block with. I want it to create with these objects, and I'm going to hit enter. Now, this is a group, this is a block. This is a group, this is a block. Notice that blocks do not have grips and blocks blocks do not have grips and they do not have a bounding box. Groups do have grips and they do have bounding boxes. Now the only grip that actually matters in a group is where its center point is, and there is no center point for a block. Why is there no center point for a block? Because kind of the way that AutoCAD does it is if there is a center point, there should be a grip there. But when I select this, there is no grip. And that kind of implies that there is no center point. Why? Well, okay. Let's say that I want to edit this block. I made a mistake. My phantom looks retarded, so I want to make something else with it. Okay. So what do? Well, I have a block now, so let's do what I did up here. And let's just copy it. Cool. Copy works fine. I'm going to go into this, and I right-click, and I have two options. I can edit the block in place, or I can go into the block editor. Block editor? It's all capitalized and everything. It looks fancy. Let's do it. And oh my god, it brought me to a really bright screen. There's my phantom. It's really hard for even me to see, so I doubt it's even going to show up on the YouTube video, but trust me that these lines are there. And notice that this is a completely different model space. When I opened up the block editor, things happened. And okay, I can barely see, and I know you guys can't see. So I'm going to change the color to dark blue because that's easily seen. And then I'm going to change it back forward. Now, notice that the ribbon did this thing. When I entered the block editor, it gave me the block editor tab, which was not there before. And it gave me this incredibly complicated looking block editor tab. I mean, it looks like I can do parameters. I could do symmetric lines across functions and horizontal planes, and I can auto constrain. There's some crazy nutball stuff going on up here. This is used for like animations. This is used for quickly making certain things up to code, like up to ADA standards or whatever. There's a lot of things you can do with this. I am not familiar with this. There are some people who are incredibly familiar with this. If you work for the county or the state as a, I'll just go off a little tangent. If you work for the county or the state reviewing plans, the standards that you create, you pretty much create using these. They will give you a file, and all that file has in it is a block. And that block has fancy stuff. And they do that fancy stuff up here. This is also like, hey, I want the function f of x equals 15 times x squared. Well, this is how you would do it. I'm 99% certain that you would put it as a parameter in x, y, and z, and it would plot it for you. I'm not smart enough to do that, nor do I have enough time to figure that out, and we do not need to use these parameters. Well, we might not need to use these parameters for the project, so don't worry about it. Now, I usually just take this and I'm like, yeah, nope, sorry. Home tab looks a lot more familiar. Sorry, block editor. Don't want to see you. But I do like this part, the close block editor. That's the only part I like about this tab. Now, let's make this a little bit more inviting, shall we? Let's make this, ooh, no. Let's make it look a little bit more like a face. So let's make the center of the ellipse. And then I can scale it down. Let's scale it down a quarter. Now make it a fifth. Well, twice as big as that. There we go. And then I can take this ellipse and I can say, see ya. Yeah, now we're looking. And then I'll just mirror it over to the other side. And make sure that all of this is the way it is. Whoops. Which layer were these on? This was on the 2D no plot. So this also needs to be on 2D no plot. Cool. And I think I'm done. I think it looks scary enough. So I'm going to go into the block editor. I'm going to close it. Save changes to Phantom. And oh my god, it updated over here. That is insane. And notice that it didn't update with these. So really what's happening is that, notice that when I edited this block, it did not give a shit about this block. Sorry, I keep mixing these up. This is a group, these are groups. When I edited this group, it did not change this group. Now, I edit this block, and it changes this block. How amazing is that? And it seems to have its own model space, which is exactly why it doesn't have a midpoint. This has a midpoint because all that exists in this object are these 5 things, these 3 lines and these 2 splines, and that is a finite area. This is a block. It does not have a finite area. It is literally, this block is just as big as this entire model space because it is also a model space. So there's not going to be a midpoint grip because there is no midpoint or center point or whatever you want to call it. There's the origin, and then that's it. And notice that the origin is where I specified it. When I created this block, what I did, when I created this block, I said that I wanted the base point to be the origin. That's what this little grip is. For groups, this is the center point of the group, or the insertion point, or the base point. For blocks, this is referred to as a base point, or insertion point. It does not make sense to say that it has a center point. Now, that's pretty cool. But there's another way that I can edit it. I can edit it in place. You get to that point, I should have specified. You select it, then you right click and you hit edit block in place. Okay, it has 2 tabs. Identity reference. It asks you to identify the reference that you want, and I want the reference to be phantom. And then I want to automatically select all nested references. Please make sure that's always selected. Prompt to select nested references. That gets a little bit more convoluted. People usually make mistakes. It's very nice to just keep it automatically selecting all the nested references. Settings, create a unique layer, style, and block name, check. Lock layers not in working set, check. Done. Hit OK. And now I'm editing this thing in place. I doubt this is going to show itself on the video. But if I zoom in really close over here, we see some of the line work that we did in the last 2 videos. This is actually editing this block within the context of the other model space. How cool is that? It's putting the blocks model space inside of the files model space. It's consolidating the 2 spaces and preventing you from editing anything in the background so you can focus and fading in. Your fading values will probably be just as bad as this. I'm probably going to change my fading values, but the cool thing is that you can't edit that. I mean, I can select it, but I can't do anything with it. It says that the command is not allowed. Phantom is already checked out for editing. Well, yeah, because it's not allowing me to edit anything else but Phantom. And it's the same thing. I mean, I can make this guy look even scarier if I really wanted to, which I kind of do. Well, I don't know if that makes him look scarier, but we'll go with it. And when I save my changes, it updates it over here. And again, does not update the group because these are groups and these are blocks. Now, that's really cool. But there's actually one more feature for a block that I would really like to take into consideration. Oh my god, I lost control of my hands and now I'm going to delete everything. And then, oh my god, I lost control of my hands and I'm going to save and exit the file. Oh no, I'm screwed. I really loved that Phantom. And I feel bad that I just deleted it and then saved and exited. So when I go back into the model, yeah, there's no amount of undoing that I can do to get that phantom back. Well, now I'm kind of sad. I really liked it. If I did that to this block, the block would go away forever. Blocks don't really go away forever. That phantom still exists somewhere. I just have to find it. I mean, this makes sense intuitively. That thing was not inside of this model space. It was inside of its own model space. So just because I deleted it from this model space does not mean that it should delete itself from its own model space. It just stops showing itself here. So where the heck can I find it? Well, there's the block manager, which is kind of a pain in the ass to get to, and it's a real pain in the ass to manage. The best way to do this is to go into the Insert tab and insert block. And if you go into the pull-down menu, I can find it. And there it is. These are all the other blocks that I either created or I stole. Yeah, we don't talk about that. Phantom exists. I want the base point to be 0, 0, just like I had it before. Why? Seriously? Why is this being complete shit? Thank you. So it did it. It just needed to know. Sometimes my AutoCAD screws up. But basically the idea is that if you delete a block, it does not delete the block. It doesn't even delete the geometry inside the block. As you see, they're still here. And when I made the insertion point the same as it was, it's even in the same location. And then I can copy it over here, and it's like it never happened. How is this possible? Because these things do not exist in the same plane as all these other things. I mean, trust me, if I were to take this right here and I were to delete it and then I were to save and exit, that's not coming back. I mean, yeah, I can fake it. I can take the raw data and I can move it over here. We've seen me recreate these blocks these groups over and over again, but blocks are special. I don't need to do that. I can delete every instance of the block, and I can even delete the source data, which is this. I can delete these two things, and I can delete this, and I can still get the block back. Awesome. I mean, really awesome. Why? Well, the block is still in the file. That's what the domestic means for referencing. Domestic references are in the file. So this phantom block is still inside of this file. But the information is stored in a different place. So there's three general, there's probably more, but, well, there is definitely more, but all you need to know for now is that there are three places that AutoCAD stores its material. The first is it stores things as part of a model space. So right now, all this junk over here is stored, and actually all this stuff is all stored inside of the model space. The second way that AutoCAD stores information is off of data templates. A type of data template name is dimension line. Another type of data template name is block. Another type is ellipse. Now, not the ellipse, not like Do we have any ellipses down here? Oh, we don't have ellipses down here. We need to add an ellipse. Cool. That's an ellipse. And it would suck if someone just took a line and cut. Oh, no. Well, now we can just kill part of this ellipse. Notice that this ellipse is still part of a bigger ellipse. That you can't see it very well, but it actually still shows the outline of the ellipse. If I were to do that to a circle, I mean, no. The circle, if I were to do that to a circle, the circle would just die. I mean, it would not survive it. This is now an arc. So the thing that's important to understand is that ellipses, this part right here that's still showing, is inside of this model space. But the fact that it's an ellipse, the fact that you're able to redraw it even after you trim, has to do with how the data is stored. When I trimmed this circle, that shit's gone. I mean, it's gone. It's like I deleted that part of the circle. But this stuff still shows up, and it's able to be retraced. This stuff is not able to be retraced in the same way. The reason why is because the data for an ellipse is stored in a data template. It's not stored in the model space. And the last, for the purposes of this tutorial series, if you want to call it that, is there's only one other place that it stores information. And that is under a references palette, which we'll get to next. So, let's go into here and let's save. Again, even though I proved that it doesn't matter, because I can always retrieve the block again. Let's go over a more complicated type of reference. So these two things, groups and blocks, are both domestic references. That means that these are both references that are inside of the file that you're working with. But there is something called an external reference, commonly referred to as an XREF, as in XREF. XREFs are amazing, but they're very tricky. Notice that blocks can get tricky to delete, right? I don't want to delete a bunch of other crap, but they're tricky to delete, right? I mean, I would love to just take this and just delete it, but we all know that I could just go back into the file and recover the block, and that's fancy. Well, external references are even trickier, because instead of managing it from a weird data template that's not really easily accessible by the user, external references are accessed through the Microsoft file system. The File Explorer, your actual hard drive, your thumb drives, your disks, your heck, even CDs if you wanted to do that. External references gives AutoCAD the ability to go through your shit, which is amazing, because sometimes some things that you have on your hard drive can be used as part of your project. So, how do we deal with that? Well, let me check something. Let me check that something. Let me back up. Let me check that something exists. I have a TIFF file, a TIFF file. I've never actually tried putting a TIFF file in AutoCAD, so let's see if this works. But generally, I don't know if you guys can actually see this, but there are three palettes over here. On the top, we have Layer Properties Manager. In the middle, we have Properties. And in the bottom, we have External References. I highly recommend you always have all three of these open. You can have others open too. There's more palettes, but these three are most commonly used. I'm going to go into the external references palette. I'm going to right click and I'm going to attach image. So it gives me options. It says attach DWG, that's attach another CAD file. Attach image, which whatever that means. Attach DWF, which is another file that's owned by Autodesk. So like a Revit file, which we'll get into later. A DGN file is Autodesk's competitor. PDF, we know what PDFs are. Point clouds are cool. And coordination models. I don't really know where TIF stands in all this, so I'm going to call it an image. And then it brings up my computer and it asks me to find the file. Okay. So I'm going to select, it found the TIF file, and I'm going to select the TIF file. And it says processing image, and it's a very, very large file. It's 407 megabytes. I'm probably pushing the limits here. And just like the block editor, it's going to give me a few options. It's going to ask me for what its name is. I cannot change the name because it has to match the name that the image is saved as. This is an actual photo, an actual image that I have on my computer that I'm going to put inside of this CAD model space. And so that name needs to be the same name as the file itself. It's going to go into path, relative path, full path, no path. Well, I'm going to make it full path for now. The scale I'm going to make as 1:1, and the rotation I'm going to leave as no rotation, and the insertion point I'm going to make at the origin, and then I'm going to hit OK and take my chances. Okay. Is it here? Oh, it's really, really small, but man, there it is. And this is actually a really detailed image. It's actually kind of scary. They took this from satellite. And notice that Sugar Pine does not exist at the moment, according to this. So if you really wanted to know what that area of campus looked like before Sugar Pine got there, then there you go. Another dead giveaway that the dead tree is not here. Anyways, this is an image of campus, obviously, that I obtained. And this is a massive file. I want to make sure that this image is on the 0 layer. If you are referencing something in a domestic reference, such as blocks and groups, do not need to be on the 0 layer. For reasons I will not get into in this video, you absolutely should put external references on the 0 layer when you insert them. Now, when I click this, the ribbon changes to the Image tab. It is an external reference, and I can turn background transparency on. It's showing the image right now, but I can make it so it's not showing the image, just to make it less laggy. I can control the brightness and the contrast and the fade and all this wonderful stuff. And clipping boundary is a really nice thing. So this is, before we get too far ahead of ourselves, I'm going to make this thing massive. I mean, I know for a fact that this thing is a really high quality image. So I'm able to explode it, and it's just as high of an image. TIF files, by the way, have a really unique property when it comes to, let me back up. So earlier I said I wasn't really too familiar on how to attach TIF files. I wasn't able to do one. I've not had a reason to put a TIFF file in a CAD model space for a long time, but I used to work with these a lot for blueprinting. And generally speaking, a TIF file has really amazing scaling properties for AutoCAD. See, if this was a PNG file, I just multiplied its size by like 200. Like it's like 200 or 300 times the size that it used to be. And it looks just as beautiful as it was. Now, part of it's because it's a high-scale image to start with, but the other part is that it's a TIF file, and TIF files have amazing scaling properties when they're in a vector space. PNG files and JPEGs, JPEGs kind of, but PNG files and JPEGs suck when it comes to that. TIF files are absolutely superior, which is probably exactly why they have this image as a TIF file. Okay. Now, I have this massive ass file that probably just added a crap ton of size to my practice model here, but that's okay. Let's just say that I want to stalk someone on the tennis courts. Say Billy Bob is over here playing tennis, and I don't care about all this other stuff. I just want to see Billy Bob, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the TIF file. I'm going to create a clipping boundary. It gives me a lot of options. I can select a polyline. I can make it polygonal. I can make it rectangular, or I can invert the clip. So to start with, I'm actually going to copy this multiple times, and we're going to look at the differences between these two. Between those. Now I'm really going to kill my computer. Okay, so this top left one, this top right one, I know directions. This top right one, I select it, and I want to create a clipping boundary. The first thing I want to do is select a polyline. Well, first I need a polyline, so let's exit out of this, deselect it, and let's make a little polyline. Let's make a little, well, let's make it a polygon. That's slightly more intriguing. Let's make it a hexagon. Because why not? And Billy Bob is like right here. Cool. So Billy Bob is approximately in that area. He's probably moved around since. I want to select this. I want to create a clipping boundary. And I want to select a polyline, and I select the line that I just made, and it just cut all of that off. And now I'm just staring right at Billy Bob. Cool. It's still, this by the way, what I just clicked is a polyline. Notice that the grips kind of tell it off, but I can also go into properties and verify that it is a polyline, and then I can delete it. I'm done with that. I don't need that polyline anymore. This is now the TIFF file. And I have a new grip. Grip, right? Notice that these things actually change. These actually act as dynamic grips. And then I have another dynamic grip right here. And it's an arrow. Let's say Billy Bob just realized that I'm staring at him, and he's like flips me off, and I'm just like, hey, don't flip me off, screw you. Well, now I'm not looking at you anymore. This inverts the clip boundary. So this clip boundary says everything outside of this region must be deleted, and everything inside of the region must be shown. This says everything outside the region must be shown, everything inside the region must be deleted. That's pretty cool. So, Billy Bob number 1. All right, Billy Bob number 2. Let's create a clipping boundary for this one. Polygonal clipping boundary. I'm going to specify the first point. I want the first point to be here and the second point to be here. And notice that it's kind of creating a polygon as I'm doing it. Which is, it's like it's already closed, like this is a triangle. I've only clicked twice and all of a sudden it's a triangle. Cool. And that's how you do it. And again, invert clip, not invert clip. I don't think I needed 4, I think I needed 3, but whatever. Rectangular. What does that mean? Well, it's probably the same thing as the one before it, but it's rectangular. Right? Cool. So actually what I should do is I should show the differences between these objects. Oh, whoops. So notice that beforehand I was able to click on the picture, but I can't click on the edge of the picture. Well, the reason why I can't click on the edge of the picture is because this is not the bounding edge anymore. This is. So I'm going to take, apparently, Billy Bob 1, 2, and 3, and I'm going to move it off to the side a little bit. Okay. This is how you attach something. Let's attach something else. Let's attach something that's more interesting than an image. Let's attach something that changes over time. No, not a movie. But what we can do is the next best thing is attach a DWG file, which is a drawing file, which is the file type for AutoCAD. I attach a DWG. It asks me to go find one. Okay, let me go find one. Sure, this will be funny. Let's do this one. Asks me for the name. Well, the name is what I've specified on my hard drive. Asks me for a reference type, attachment or overlay. Well, I don't know what those are yet, so I'm just going to ignore that for now. And scale. Well, I want the scale to be uniform, and I want it to be nothing bigger and nothing smaller. I want the path to be full. I want the rotation to be nothing. I want the insertion point to be at the origin. I don't want any of that funky business. The funky business that happened over here. Remember when I deleted the thing, I deleted the block, and then I went back in, and then I inserted the block, and it was a weird insertion point, so I put it like way down here in the bottom. Well, that's why. And it asked me for the block units. Well, this isn't a block. This is actually another DWG file. So these things are grayed out, but it tells me what the units are. The units are in inches. All right, so apparently I'm going to put this in as an attachment. So let's see what that means. And the file name is Goat House. Goat House is... Oh, is Goat House really big? I'm trying to find the thing that I just shoved in. Ah, here it is. First things first. It is a, well, first things first. It is an external reference, not a domestic one, so I should make it on the 0 layer. Okay. And when you attach, this is an image file, right? This thing with Billy Bob, that's an image file. There's nothing fancy with an image file, but DWG files are complex. I mean, look at all the stuff we made. We made groups, and we made blocks, and we made splines, and we mirrored things, and we attached freaking images in. Like, these things are dense. They are very complicated. So what you need to do is be careful with them when you put them in. I attached a DWG file. The first thing I should do is make sure that all the layers in this file exist. All the layers in the file that I just attached need to exist in this file right here. So I'm going to go into the Layer Properties Manager and recognize that there is a brand new filter. This filter is called Unreconciled New Layers. They're new layers that have not been reconciled. So what I should do is right-click on one of the layers, select all, right-click again, and hit Reconcile Layer. Now all the layers are reconciled, and there will be no, well, there will theoretically be no issues, no simple issues with layers in this file. Now, this is fun. What can we do with it? Well, notice that when we put a block in, let's move this stuff closer. There's no need for, well, I don't care. When I selected that and right-clicked it, block editor exists, and edit block in place exists. When I sometimes I accidentally click on the axes. When I click on this, open reference and edit reference in place. If I hit open reference, it just takes me to the file. It opens that other file in this program. Cool. Now, even cooler, if I were to do something, if I were to make a big ass circle, and then I were to save and exit, notice that that circle did not show up. Well, that's because I haven't updated it yet. AutoCAD is really nice. Sometimes you don't want things to automatically update for you. Sometimes you actually want things to be updated yourself. I made the changes. I would like them to be updated, so I go into the External References palette, I click on an empty space, and I right-click and hit Reload All References. And now they're all reloaded. And there's the circle. Notice something weird about the way that these objects are showing. I open the reference, and they're white. Yet somehow, when they're in this drawing, they're purple. This is one of the unique properties about layer 0. All the objects on this layer are layer 0. And layer 0 in this file is white. This reference is on layer 0, and layer 0 in this file is purple. Layer 0 is a transparent layer system. If I go into this file and I change the layers to something else, oh, not def points. Ignore 0 and def points for the majority of your stuff, please. Oh, God. And then I save and exit. I put those things on different layers than layer 0. And again, they haven't shown up yet because I have not reloaded it. And now they're shown up. This is the idea of layer 0. This reference in this file is on layer 0. Layer 0 says, I want my properties to be the properties of other layers. The layer 0 in this file right here, is transparent. And through that transparency, you see the colors and properties of all the layers inside of it. Now, it's not going to work the other way around. If I put this on, whoa, I accidentally dragged a bunch of my tabs around. Okay, so if I select this and I put it on, say, the section layer, it's still going to show up. And if I go into here, I open the references. It might not do what it might not do what I'm telling it to because these things are a little bit delicate. But let's just put all this stuff back on layer 0. and reload it, notice that they are now all the same color as the layer that I just put this reference on. Which is really freaking weird, right? That's because it's transparent. I want the colors of this reference to show up. So I better make this shit on layer 0 so it's transparent the correct way. The way that I had it was that it was transparent from the reference to the file. But I don't want the reference looking at the file. I want the file looking at the reference. So I'm going to go into here and open up the reference and put these things on the correct layers. Or not the correct layers, but the layers that I had them on earlier, which was a wall. And a wall stands for architectural wall. And annotation nameplate. Now it's saved, and I update it, and now it's transparent the correct way. This is generally how external references operate. Now, I inserted this as an attachment. What happens when I insert something as an overlay? Well, how do we find out? I'm going to save before I do this because why not? I'm going to open up the file. This file is inside of this file. This file is inside of this file. Let's put a file in this file to see how it operates. I'm going to go into External References palette. I'm going to attach a DWG, goodness gracious. And I'm going to attach it as an attachment. And I'm going to make it look weird, so I'm going to specify the rotation. And I'm going to make it like this. So now this looks the same, but it's not. And this thing is on layer 0. And when I go in, I should make this stuff not on layer 0. I should make this stuff on layer this. And for sake of clarity, let's make it a different color. Let's make it red. So this is an attachment. Let's close. Let's close this and see what happens on this end. Again, there's attachment and there's overlay. When I make this an attachment, it shows up. When I click this, it also clicks this. I go into Open Reference, and now a new window appears, and it says, oh my god, there's multiple files, I can't handle this. So what you do is you click Highlight Selected References and Open. And it opens all of them. Well, specifically it opens the one you want, which was this one. Now I'm going to go into this. I'm going to go into the External References. I'm going to take this red thing right here. This red thing right here, I'm going to make it an overlay, not an attachment. And we'll see what the difference is. And then I'll reload. By the way, this asterisk next to the name means that it's updated. Changes were made. So when I made it an overlay, nothing changed except that, oh my god, it's missing. How? Let's go over why that is. The idea is that external references can show up or they don't. Think about the block. Remember when I deleted the phantom block? Every time I zoom out, it has to process the image again. Remember when I deleted the phantom block? And then I saved and exited, and I came back and was somehow able to pull this out of my ass? Well, the reason why is because there is two kinds of things. There's attachments and there's overlays. Right now, these two blocks are attachments. They exist and they're showing up. If they were overlays, then they exist, but they're not allowed to show up. I made, well, it's not showing up right now, but I made this red thing an overlay, which means it exists, right? This thing still exists, but it's not going to show up in any file that this file is referenced into. And actually, just to remember that I have it attached, to remember that I have it as part of this file, I'm actually still going to I'm going to turn it back into an attachment. And you can turn things into attachments or into overlays in whatever way you want. It doesn't really matter. As you see, now it's back because I turned it into an attachment. So, generally speaking, there are many differences between attachments and overlays in terms of how they are used in industry. But there are very few functional differences. All the attachment and overlay means is that an overlay is not carried through multiple iterations of a reference. A reference can have as many references inside of it as it wants. Let's go through some terminology. This red thing is a reference inside. This is a reference inside of this reference. We call this a nested reference. This is a normal external reference. This is a nested external reference. I'm going to be using that terminology a lot, which is precisely why I want to go over it. Now when I click on this and I want to open it, it asks me about nested references. Well, that's why. It asks me about nested references because it detects that there is a nested reference inside of it. Now, this reference can have another thing inside of it. It doesn't matter. You can You can have as many references as you want. It doesn't really make that much of a difference. So, in this video, we went over the differences between domestic and external referencing. We went over groups, blocks, and attachments and overlays, and the different ways that you can use them. Generally speaking, we should use groups for things that are annoying to move over and over and over again, like a tree. I don't really want all the trees on campus to look exactly the same, so a block would not be a good choice. So I should make each tree a group. And that way I only have to click one of the branches or one of the leaves, and then it selects the whole tree, and then I can move it wherever I want. Contour lines, which denote the changes in elevation, is probably something that I'm going to want to edit separately. So either I can make it a domestic reference in block form, or I make it an external reference in attachment form. But either way, contours are complicated and they should be used in ways that make it easier to work with. So typically I would put a set of contours in a block so I can edit them in a different model space. without having to go to a different file, because different files just make it even more complicated. And the last thing I want to go over is, and this is something that you guys will absolutely run into when you download the working set thing off of the Google Drive. You will come up with a problem, or you'll have a problem where all these references are not attached. You'll open up the file, and it will come up with an error message that says one or more attachments or one or more external references could not be found or are missing or whatever. What it's asking is, hey, I'm a computer and I'm stupid and I don't know how to look for things myself. Could you please help me find where this TIFF file is? This TIFF file is stored in a very specific location on my computer. These files are stored in a very specific location on my computer. And the place that it's stored on my computer is not the place that it's stored on your computer. So when you download it, the references are going to be what's called broken. Broken references cause the most amount of headaches when I'm working because people don't know how to, it's really annoying, people don't know how to mend their references. But generally speaking, when you send an email with DWG files that have references, the first thing you need to go into is the external references palette and check out all of those. You need to check out every single option underneath each of those references and make sure that the path is the same path that you have on your computer. One thing you can do to avoid it is, you can't see this, but in my Explorer, in my File Explorer, I have all this stuff on my thumb drive, just because. I have the AutoCAD practice model, and it's a long story why it's called Goat House, but I have Goat House and Goat House Copy. Goat House Copy is this red thing. Goat House is this thing. I have those things in the same folder as my AutoCAD practice model. So what I can do is I can say, hey, yo, AutoCAD, stop being a dumbass. Just make the path relative. And here's what this does. Making the path relative says it's relative to what, right? It's relative to the file that you're working in right now. So right now I'm working in Goat House, and I made Goat House Copy, which is what this file is, relative. That means that it knows where it is. This file, AutoCAD knows where to find this file. Of course it does, because it has this file open. Not only does it have this file open, but it's able to find the other file in the same folder. So what relative does is, instead of it going to a specific location on the disk, is it just goes to the same location that you have this file in, and then, wow, really, everything is just so laggy today. Anyways, so it goes to the same file location that this file is in, and it searches for your reference. Make path full. If it's a full path, then it goes all the way back to the root of your drive. The root of your thumb drive, the root of your C drive, the root of your D drive, or whatever. And if it's a no path, then no path is weird. No path is what you do for exporting. It makes things a little bit wacky. But generally speaking, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this AutoCAD practice model on the Google Drive. with some of the other files on there. And I want to see if people can actually put the files in their correct location when they download the file and start operating it. Now, unfortunately, there's no good way to actually do this without opening up the file itself. So you're going to need to open up the file and play with it a little bit, open up the external references palette, and make sure that all the paths are set the way they need to. Because if they're not, then that file whose path is broken is not going to show up at all. And you're going to think it's missing. And I've had to deal with a lot of files that have duplicate stuff on it because people think it's missing, but really they just forgot to check the, the external references palette. So next time we're going to go over some higher functionality of CAD. Haven't really decided what the subject matter is going to be, but now since we're at intermediate level user capability, I decided we should probably do some more intermediate level on the video stuff. So I'll see you next time.